Okay, so tell us who you are and what you're talking about.
Hi everyone, my name is Anes. I am the Eastern Canadian Sales Director for ZoomEd Laboratories. I'm very excited to be here at ZoomEd headquarters, and I am going to be talking about Sailfin Dragons, also known as Sailfin Lizards. So I personally fell in love with these animals at a very young age when I saw a picture of them on the Reptiles Magazine, and it was literally like seeing a living dragon. These things are so prehistoric looking. They are actually a lot of fun to keep for a few different reasons. I also like fish a lot. So naturally, being a fish hobbyist, I also get to recreate a true large paludarium for them, which is really what they need. And the species specifically that I keep is native to the Philippines. It's the Hydrosaurus pustullatus, also known as the blue sailfin dragon. And they are neat because they only come from that region. With the blue color when they're excited, there's nothing cooler to me than watching that sail lift up. It is literally like keeping pet dinosaurs to me. And the main reason why I keep them is their environment. So I'm able to keep fish at the bottom portion of the setup, and then I'm also able to keep a really beautiful terrarium up top, and I'm kind of bringing those two worlds together because they need it very, very hot and very humid, and definitely large enclosures.
So you mentioned that they can raise and lower their fins.
Yeah, so when they get really, really excited, or when they see their female, they definitely will. You'll see basically their whole back kind of arches up. They get a really nice crest on the back, and then their fin will raise, and it'll get a really, really nice red through it. It's a really spectacular looking animal, and with a lot of time, they definitely will calm down, and they definitely will let you completely handle them, but it does take a long time, which is another thing I really appreciate about this species, is if you put the time into it, they really make a good pet. But one thing definitely that a lot of people, they look at sailfins and they think that they keep them in small cages. That's definitely something that is to be taken into consideration when keeping the species long term. Yeah, so most of my babies will go into basically floor space of a 40-gallon breeder, but I like to use black tubs, and a lot of guys do, because they will run into glass if they're spooked, and they're very, very explosive lizards. So what happens is they basically run into the glass and they get nostril damage, which is very common in water dragons. So for that reason, I'll keep them in basically in tubs as babies, and then pretty much at 6 months of age, I put them in wood cages. So most of mine are 6x4 by 2 tall, and then permanent enclosures are anywhere from 8x4 right to the ceiling. But like I said, I like to make it look like an actual environment. So what I do is I have a large fish tank on the bottom and basically create a terrarium up top, which is kind of what, when I went to see them in the wild, they were all found right around water, especially the babies and the juvies, because obviously when they get spooked, they basically dive into the water and they can hold their breath for 30-40 minutes, which is quite incredible. And the other thing that's really neat, when they hatch out, their feet are like 2/3 the size of their body. It is bizarre because I guess their feet have to be that developed because 2 reasons. They have to be able to run really, really fast from predators, and they're also able to run right across water, much like the basilisks do as well, which a lot of people don't realize. So they do have almost webbed feet when they're born, and their feet are huge. It's quite a sight when they hatch.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, sailfins.
How long have you been keeping them?
So I've been keeping sailfins for about 13 years now. I was keeping the Weberi and the Amboenses because they were a little bit easier to acquire. And then when I really fell in love with the species, I acquired some captive bred babies from a couple of the big breeders in the U.S. Scott Corning from Florida is very well known, and he's been keeping Sailfin Dragons for a very long time. And in fact, his Sailfin Dragons are kind of the superstars that end up on all the Reptiles Magazine. So that's what really got me into Sailfins for sure. It depends on the species. So my species, the pustullatus or the blue Philippines, they'll get about 32 to 34 inches, maybe 3 feet with tail. Keep in mind, most of that is tail. The other species, like the true giant Indonesian Amboensis or Amboena, they get a little bit larger. They also have a totally different look to them. I also like them because they will get almost like like the rhino iguanas. They get a little bit of a horn on them, which looks really cool. And they get like a jet black head with a yellow peppering on the body. So it's a really spectacular looking animal, but I do not currently own those for space reasons mainly. 6 sailfins will keep your whole room pretty full. Absolutely they do. One thing that I actually learned when I did my trip to the Philippines was as babies and juvies, they're mainly eating frogs as food and a lot of small crustaceans, which would explain the really high orange colors that I saw in the ones when I was in Philippines versus the ones that you keep long term. They don't really get that nice orangey, rusty color on the side, and I think a lot of that has to do with the keratin that's coming from eating the small crustaceans. So naturally, because I saw that, I do give them quite a bit of shellfish as well with the shell right on. So they eat way better than most people, probably better than me. But the other thing that's really neat about them is they really eat a big variety. So if you have fish in a tank and the fish are slow moving, yes, they're going to be food very quickly. But if you have faster moving fish, even some tetras and barbs, some larger community fish that you can call, they will also happily live in there. If a fish gets if it gets slow and catches off guard, yeah, they totally will eat them. But it's also cool because they'll sit over the water and look down on them. So they're quite interactive.
They're very, that's cool. Do you breed these also?
Yeah, so I acquired some about 8 years ago when I started with Zoom. I had some captive bred babies, and then I raised those, I bred those, and I'm now working on a really cool banana phase, which is quite spectacular. They're like a really light yellow color with a really, really bright blue. It's personally just a look that I prefer, and again, they're just spectacular looking as adults for sure. So I do currently have some breeding going on as well. They're very, very easy. I think the sheer size of them might, create some problems for people, but and all the breeding tips that I've been given is basically just make sure there's a nice big open area. I actually prefer to let them roam out of the cage when they're actually looking to breed, because it's a little bit easier when there's no structure. They're a large lizard. And they're quite aggressive when they're breeding for sure, and I would definitely recommend have a large open space if you are looking to breed them. But to be honest with you, they're very, very easy to keep and breed. Just a high temperature and humidity poses a little bit of a concern. In terms of incubation, it's fairly, very straightforward. You're looking at high 80s for incubation, and the eggs are huge. This is probably the most fun part. You can literally, within about a month, when you hit a little bit of light on the actual egg, you can see the embryo moving inside. It's probably the coolest thing. And the eggs are almost the size of chicken eggs before they hatch, so they swell huge. They're really
so they're similar to chameleons where the egg expands as it develops.
Definitely, big time. And then it'll basically swell and shrink before hatching, and they hatch, like I said, all feet. It is the coolest thing. So what I really like about them is when you display them in a terrarium above a fish tank, they're a very active lizard. They will bask, they will move around, they will chase down prey, but they also, just a variety of food that they eat, from greens to veggies, a little bit of fruit, lots of fish, crustaceans. I just enjoy keeping them overall, and when you tame them down, man, it is literally a pet dinosaur. So they're a lot of fun.
Oh, so neat. Well, thanks for traveling all the way from Canada to share this information. Yeah.
I'm very, very happy to be. I love coming to headquarters and seeing all you guys and seeing all the new animals that you're working on.
Yeah, well, we're not sharing this live, but if you guys have any questions for Anes about sailfin dragons, let us know in the comments.
Perfect. Thank you very much.